in this Proper Plumber session, we're going to be talking about copper pipe. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of using copper, what the different sizes of pipe are used for, the different types of copper fittings, the soldering equipment, the preparation and how to solder, installation for copper pipe and heat loss, the different types of pipe clips, how often copper pipe should be clipped, and video footage on how to do all these things. So let's take a look at the pros of using copper pipe. Well, most manufacturers' copper tube will come with a 25-year warranty, or maybe more. It is firm and solid to use. It looks nicer and more professional, and it can be repaired easily, and it can also be painted. Now let's take a look at the cons of using copper pipe. Firstly, it can corrode. This is where the copper turns a greeny sort of colour and it basically just rots, and it can also pinhole. Then copper pipe, when it's exposed to frost and it freezes, what happens is the water inside the pipe turns into an ice block, and that ice block expands, and which splits the pipe. And then when the temperature gets a bit warmer and the water starts to thaw out inside that pipe, that's when the leaks happen. So every time there's a hard frost, I know that once it starts thawing out, that's when my phone's going to ring and you get the phone calls coming in. Next, we've got water hammer. Now this is commonly found on a water pipe that isn't clipped properly. Your kitchen cold tap, if you turn that on and off really quickly, if the pipes aren't clipped enough, then what will happen is you'll get a knocking noise or a vibrating noise through the house. I'm going to tell you how often a copper pipe should be clipped in a moment. Also, using copper is more expensive and it takes a lot longer to work with. Now, the different sizes of pipe. Now, the common sizes in the domestic house are 15 and 22 millimeter pipe. Now, you can get 28 millimeter for larger properties, such as if a property has a larger boiler, then those main big pipes coming from the boiler will be a large pipe like 28 millimeter. Some are even 35, 42 and 54 millimeter, but that's more for commercial. So the main ones for the domestic is 15 and 22. Now you can also come across what's called micro bore copper pipe. This is 8 mil, 10 millimeters and 12 millimeters. It's absolutely rubbish. A lot of properties used to use, well, I think they used to install it in the 80s, and certainly on an estate near me, it's got all this small pipe. It's good. It heats up quite quickly, but what happens is over time is that central heating systems, they will sludge up with broken down metals, and because these pipes are so small, they clog up very easily, and also they're a nightmare to power flush as well. Some companies won't even power flush these micro bore pipes, but I'll talk about that in the power flushing video. Now I'm just going to show you a few of the different types of fittings. So we've got an elbow, which is also known as a 90-degree bend, a 45-degree bend, a straight coupling, a T-piece, a reducer and a cap, also known as a stop end. So up here on the left, this is a straight coupling, and in the middle here you can see it's got this line going around it. This is the halfway point and it's a stopper. So when we insert the copper pipe into it, it will stop dead center of the fitting, so that when we solder it, it's in there at an equal distance when two pipes are put together. Now this one here, this is a 45-degree bend. This is an equal T-piece. It's called an equal T-piece because the outlets are all the same size. You can get some that are, for instance, that will be 22, 22 and then 15, but this one's an equal T-piece. Down here, this is a cap or stop end. This is a normal 90-degree elbow or bend. And then this one here, this is the reducer. So this fitting here, this side of the fitting, the larger end, is 22 millimeter, and then the smaller end of the fitting is 15 millimeter. So that's what we use to convert pipes to different sizes. Now here we have two elbows, and you might be able to tell one slightly different to the other. And the one on the left here, this is a street elbow, and the reason being is because instead of having two sockets on the end like this one has, this one here, it actually has like a copper tail, which will allow us to insert that end of the fitting into another fitting to give it a much more tighter fit. So there we are, there's the normal elbow and the street elbow. Now here we got the 45-degree angle bend. Now one's a normal and one's a street. Now can you tell which one's the street one? It's the one on the right here, and as you can tell, the one on the left, it has the two sockets, and the one on the right has the tail. Now we've got the straight couplings. Now there's the normal straight coupling, which I showed you, that has the center line in there, and now there's the 3/4 inch to 22mm straight coupling. Now this is metric and imperial. There's still some old 3/4 inch copper pipe out there, so what we because the 3/4 inch is slightly smaller than 22mm, we have to use this adapter. So this one here is the 3/4 inch to 22mm. You can slightly tell, I mean it's hard from this picture, but this end here is actually shorter than this bit here. This end of the fitting is a lot more longer. But now we've got a slip coupling. Now this slip coupling, it hasn't got the center line going around it, the center stopper. This is for if we're working on a pipe that's in a tight area, so we can slide this fitting down over the pipe, and then we can slide it back up the pipe halfway to allow us to do so. I'll talk about that in the future videos. Now we've got the T piece. So you've got the equal T, which is this one here on the right. The three outlets are all the same. And then you've got the 22 by 15. So this one in the middle here, these outside bits on the top of the T are 22mm, and the center bit is 15mm. And then the last one is a 22 15mm T, and as you can see, it's just got the 15mm. It's on a different, it's not in the center, it's on the top of the T there. Now the other fittings that can be used on copper, so we've got the end feed fitting, which is this one here, is just the normal standard copper fitting. Then we got the integral soldered ring, also known as a Yorkshire fitting. Now as you can see here on the elbow, it's got these two rings around it, and inside these rings are rolls of solder. They're more of a DIY fitting, and you can use them without using any solder. All you do is just put the fitting on the pipe, heat it up, and then the solder and flux will roll out of it. But they are normally about 3-4 times the price, and they are more of a DIY fitting. So next we've got the compression fitting, which is this one here, and it's done by tightening up a nut and an O-ring, which is called an olive, inside it. I'll show you how to put one of these together in the compression video. And next we got the plastic push fit fitting, which is this white fitting here. There are many different manufacturers out there. They can also come in a grey fitting as well. Now the push fit one, this is very easy to use, and you don't have to solder, and you don't need any other tools. You just literally push it on and it locks onto the pipe. So I'll tell you more about that in the push fit fittings video. Now let's talk about the soldering equipment. So we've got the blowtorch, which is here. So this blowtorch is actually, the bottles are actually separate, and this top bit here is the actual blowtorch gun itself. Now we've got the flux. The flux is this tub over here, and inside this lid here is a little brush. Now we'd use the flux to paste inside our fitting. Now it is important that we flux up a fitting before we apply the heat and solder to it, because if the flux isn't applied, then the solder won't take to the copper and you won't get what's called a capillary reaction. Now what the flux does once it's heated is it removes all the oxides from the metal, which also cleans the copper, giving it a nice clean surface so that the solder can flow around it nice and smoothly. Next we got the solder, which is this little roll down here, and we've got some wire wool which you can buy also in pads. And now the wire wool, we use this to clean the fitting and to clean the copper pipe. I'll show you how we use all this equipment shortly. And then we've got the heat mat. Now the heat mat here, what we would do is if we're going to solder some copper pipe down near a skirting board, so that we didn't burn the skirting board, we would put this mat between the copper pipe and the skirting, so that if the flame hits the mat, it won't actually burn the skirting. So if you're starting off, highly recommend you use one of these quite often. Now we're going to talk about preparation to solder. So first thing you need to do is you need to cut and deburr the copper tube. So if you're using a rotary copper pipe slice, it will deburr the copper tube for you, and which will make the pipe a lot more easier to go into a fitting. Whereas if you're using a hacksaw, it will leave like a rough edge on the end of it, and the pipe is then square, so trying to get it into the fitting can be quite tricky. And again, I'll show you how to cut and deburr a copper tube, and I'll show you what happens when you cut it with a hacksaw. So then the second stage is you need to clean the pipe and fitting with wire wool. This is important because we want a nice clean surface for the solder to flow around. Then after we've cleaned it, we need to apply the flux to the tube, and then we need to add even heat to the fitting. So wherever the heat is, the solder will naturally follow the heat and flux. And what we do is we heat up the fitting for around 10 seconds and then apply the solder. And then when the fitting's cooled, we wipe off the excess flux with a damp cloth. So what is flux? Flux is a very important ingredient for when it comes to soldering. It is a paste compound which makes a capillary reaction, which makes our solder stick to the copper tube and fitting. Without it, this wouldn't happen. And it also cleans and removes oxides from metals, but also it corrodes copper pipe over time unless we wipe away the remaining flux with our damp cloth. And also when we first turn the water, if we've just run some pipes and we first turn the water on, you actually see it flush out the flux. The water will come out a greeny colour at first, but after that it's fine. But if you don't wipe it, it's more important on the outside. So if you don't wipe the flux on the outside, then it will corrode the pipe. But naturally, when you first turn the water on, it flushes the inside out. Also, if you get it on your hands, it will turn your skin green. And if you get it on your clothes, it's quite commonly seen on plumbers, their t-shirts, they will be sort of a purple, reddy type of colour. So now we're going to look at the different types of solder. So there's a green roll and a red roll, as you can see there. So lead-free solder is the green roll. It's twice the price than leaded solder, and you must use it on hot and cold water appliances for the water regulations. Now the leaded solder is a red roll. It's half the price. It's actually cheaper than lead-free solder, and you can use it on central heating systems, and it's less runny to use. Now we're going to talk about the different types of wire wool. So you could buy a big roll, which is this roll here on the right, and it comes in a 450 gram sort of bunch, or you could buy a pack of 12 pads, which is normally around 37 grams. The different types of grade of wire wool. So coarse is the where it's more aggressive, it's more rougher, and you get bits of metal stuck into your hands. And then there's the medium, which you can use on rust, and there's the fine, which is for people who have more delicate hands. But whichever one you choose to use, they all do the same job for what we want to do, and that's just to clean our copper pipe. Now we're going to talk about one of the most exciting tools to use when it comes to soldering pipes, which is the blowtorch. Now Rothenberg is a type of blowtorch that I personally use, and a lot of plumbers I know use, as it is a very professional blowtorch. It has an adjustable flame on it, and the tip doesn't get hot, so if you're using it and you go to handle it, it won't burn your hands. And also if you then go and put it down on the customer's floor, it won't singe or burn their carpet as well, because if you do that, you won't be in their good books, and it can be a very expensive mistake. So there is also that's the Rothenberg blowtorch, this one here on the left, and now this one on the right is more of a DIY blowtorch. People use this one for camping and cooking. So now let's take a look at the different types of gas bottles. Different colour 400 gram bottles for gases. Bottles are easy to change. The MAP gas is the yellow bottle, and the propane gas is a black or a blue bottle. Now the MAP gas gives off a much more hotter flame than the propane one. I personally like to use the propane one, because I find that the MAP gas will make my soldering all black and sooty, whereas I find it a lot more easier to do with the propane. So here's the soldering mat, and this will prevent you from burning close by objects, like I said earlier, the skirting board. It will also prevent you from burning walls. So now I'm going to show you how to actually do all this.